I'm your host, Stassi Schroeder. Welcome to Tell Me Lies, the official podcast. What's the most unhinged thing of season 3?
Steven, because he's so evil.
I do think he is misunderstood.
You see everyone face consequences.
It's intoxicating. The writers just know how to trick you. There's always a twist in this show.
It's nothing you would expect.
Tell Me Lies, the official podcast, now streaming, and stream the new season of Tell Me Lies on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Welcome back to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings in the industry you can regularly read over on The Wrap, and whose musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can still listen to over on Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. As we get started here, there is some breaking news that's very much on the sad side. And Mr. Taylor, you only just learned about this as we're recording the show today, and written up a piece that will go up on The Wrap shortly. But do you want to talk about who we just lost?
Yeah, we just lost Roger Allers, who is a legend in animation. Got his start with Steve Lisberger on Animalaniacs, or Animalympics, I should say, and he worked on Tron, and then later, worked on Rock and Rule for Nevada, and then he went over to Japan and worked on Little Nemo, but of course will be best remembered for his work with Disney throughout the Disney Renaissance and directing, of course, The Lion King with Rob Mink, and overseeing the various stage productions in the years that followed the animated feature. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. I spoke at length with Tom Schumacher, who used to run Disney Animation, about him and his legacy, and just a really sad turn of events. And, if you have that bootleg copy of the Sweatbox, maybe time to break it out. In tribute of Roger. He's seen throughout that documentary just a very, gracious guy. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about him, Jim, but yeah.
Well, I tell you what, folks. Again, this news literally just broke, and Drew and I were discussing off the air that we'll do something of size about Mr. Allers on next week's Fine Tuning. On the other hand, this week's Fine Tuning, when we get to the feature portion of the show, Drew's going to be talking about, first of all, are you allowed to talk about a certain excursion to the north?
I can say that I was at Pixar, I think. And Jim, you can look at my sweatshirt right here and see what I was there for, as I am repping the Pond crew here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was up at Pixar for Hoppers. I can't say much about it. I would never be able to say like how much I love the movie or anything like that, Jim. So we'll have to button that up and, adhere to that embargo. But
there we go.
But I was at Pixar. It was lovely. I saw so many of my dear friends up there while I was there. And we'll talk. We'll talk when we can talk.
There we go. Okay. Them's the rules within an embargo,
That's
folks.
Right.
On the other hand, the other event that Drew will talk about on today's show happened on the Disney lot within like the last 10 days or so, right? This was the press event for Leslie Iwerks' brand new documentary, Disneyland Handcrafted. And you had all sorts of, you and Katie actually had all sorts of adventures in when you were there on the Disney lot in Burbank, including, what is it, Katie's first trip into the replica of Walt's office?
That's right. And
okay.
My first look at the hospital room where I was hospitalized during the Christmas break from the lot because I was at St. Joe's. Yes.
There we go. All right. Well, but that's later on in today's show, which, by the way, Drew and I are recording today. This is Sunday, January 18th. And recently on this podcast, we've talked a lot about A.A. Milne, again, the author of the two books, Winnie the Pooh from 1926 and The House at Pooh Corner from 1928, that led to the Bear of Little Brain becoming, this behemoth. But what's interesting is that A.A. Milne was born 144 years ago today. The day that Drew and I are recording, January 14th, 1982. And Drew, just to throw another weird little factoid on the fire here, when Milne was a young boy, and as you did back then, was sent off to boarding school, one of his teachers was H.G. Wells, like the time machine,
War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells. Wow, yeah.
There we go. So I love that sort of stuff. You can't make up that cred. So, anyway, okay. For now, lots of news this week. But before we get to the news, we, of course, have to acknowledge our sponsor. And that is, of course, unlockmagic.com, where you get real discounts on Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando tickets, sometimes upwards of 12% off. And just so you know, Unlock Magic is run by the exact same team behind the DVC rental store and the DVC resale market. So if you are planning a trip to Central Florida in 2026, just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. Unlock Magic makes it that easy to get some pretty significant savings. And when you get your tickets, please tell the nice folks at Unlock Magic that it was Drew and Jim who sent you. Okay, now, as we do at this part of the show every week, we pivot to this past weekend's box office. And going into this weekend, there was a lot of talk about, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, how this was finally going to be the movie that took down Avatar: Fire and Ash, right?
That was the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and the numbers I saw were, they anticipated that this sequel to, the original 28 Days Later was going to make something, 20 million plus domestic. And that's how it happened, right? Right now we're looking at projections of maybe 15. Is that right?
Yeah. I had seen fluctuating numbers this weekend, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is weather related. We've had a couple of snowstorms up here in the Northeast, but long story short, third Avatar movie came in at 17.2 million in North America. So that means it's number one on the box office charts for a fifth week in a row. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, that means at this point, this James Cameron film has made 367 million in North America, an additional 88 million overseas. So worldwide box office of 1,260 million to date. On the other hand, Zootopia, this sequel to the original film that came out in March of 2016, still chugging along. It's number 3 at the North American box office. And again, impressive because this is its eighth week in theaters. And it supposedly sold 12 million worth of tickets in this territory, which brings us to 393 million to date domestically. And folks at Disney are pointing toward it blowing past the 400 million barrier in North America within the next week to 10 days. You're hearing that as well?
Yeah. Did you see that it entered yeah, that was the dog. She wanted to chime in, but it is now the number 10 most successful movie of all time. Did you see that? It bumped out Jurassic World. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is actually I have I have an update for you. It's now number 9.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
In between when Drew and I have been working, it blew. It's right now. It's outgrossed Inside Out 2. Again, that was out in theaters June of 2024, and that did $1,690,000,000. It also has finally outgrossed Jon Favreau's photorealistic Lion King from 2019. That sold $1,660,000,000. So right now, again, Zootopia, worldwide box office, $1.7 billion, ninth highest grossing film in all of Hollywood history. So, on the other hand, if we slide down to the bottom of the top 10 for the North American box office chart, we find the SpongeBob movie, In Search of SquarePants. That did $2.9 million over the long Martin Luther King Day weekend, sixth week in theaters, North America. And let's see, $67 million in this territory, an additional $77 million overseas, worldwide gross of $144 million. And I bring up SpongeBob because I was at the post office just this past week and noticed they had a display there. How did we miss that the U.S. Postal System put out SpongeBob stamps last August? Have you seen these?
I had no idea. But I just got a thing in the mail that had a Lightyear stamp on it. So I'm not up to date on my stamps. Yeah.
All right. Well, and in fact, I actually have a sheet of the light. I started collecting stamps in the past year because I'm a moron. And sometime next week I will go down to my post office and buy the sheet of 16 SpongeBob stamps. By the way, all of them forever stamps. But since we're talking about animated TV series that eventually launched a series of films, did you see the announcement about the new Phineas and Ferb movie? So this is going to be the third. Now, mind you, I don't think any of them have been released theatrically, but they've done like the Disney Channel and of course now Disney Plus. But did you see about this one? That's starts production later this year and supposedly debuts in 2027?
Yes, I did see that. The last one wasn't that long ago. I feel like it was only a couple of years ago. But listen, Jim, they will bleed that stone dry. Phineas and Ferb is just like the unstoppable juggernaut of Disney Channel animation. So it does not surprise me in the least. But I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the show, but I appreciate how long it's been going, and obviously everyone that enjoys it. But yeah.
Oh yeah. And again, I'm a fan of Dan Povenmire and Jess Swampy Marsh, and they keep a lot of folks, employed. So I guess for me, the one that got away. Do you remember when there was talk of the Phineas and Ferb animated live action one? Where wasn't there talk at one point of Jim Carrey playing Doofenshmirtz?
I vaguely remember this, Jim. You're jostling things loose in my mind, but yes, okay. I think that's. I think it's good we dodged that bullet, but who knows?
All right. So, anyway, speaking of animation for television, I wanted to follow up on that Night of UPA, Mid-Century Animation Classics, back up on the big screen. This is something that Drew and I talked about in a recent fine-tuning. That presentation actually took place at the Old Town Music Hall in El Segundo, California, this past week. In fact, on Thursday, January 15th. And at that time, it was revealed that a brand new documentary about this animation studio. It's going to be entitled Animation Mavericks, The Forgotten Story of UPA, evidently nearing completion. Kevin Schreck directed, and the way it was explained to me, Drew, is that it's supposed to premiere later this year, and then we'll begin work in the festival circuit. I have to say, I myself really look forward to seeing The Forgotten Story of UPA. As a child of the late 50s, early 60s, I watched a lot of Mr. Magoo and the television version of Dick Tracy. Mind you, Drew, you don't see those cartoons a lot today for reasons we'll get into in a moment. But first, this.
So what do you want?
What do I want? I want to use my degree for good, and in general.
I kind of meant like a muffin or a latte.
I want a job with a generous work-from-grocery-store policy.
You are here a lot.
Debbie, please, I'm working.
I want a job that will change the world.
Ma'am, this is a drive-thru.
And some nuggets.
With LinkedIn's new AI-powered job search, you can find roles that match your unique skills so you can dare to discover more. Visit linkedin.com/jobs to learn more.
And we're back. All right, Drew, let's start with a fairly obvious question. When was the last time you actually saw a Mr. Magoo cartoon?
I don't know, because you're right. They were much more prevalent, a few decades ago on television. And then, Disney had the Mr. Magoo movie, which we all remember fondly.
With Leslie Nielsen playing the title character. But the very first time, the character was actually introduced in a theatrical short, The Ragtime Bear, that UPA produced in Columbia. Sent out into theaters in September of 49. And by the way, directed by animation legend John Hubley. And it's kind of, it's the same premise that you basically saw in every Mr. Magoo cartoon. You have this nearsighted, crotchety old man who, in this film, mistakes a banjo-playing bear for his nephew Waldo. Drew, let's be honest, it's kind of a one-joke character, but Jim Backus did a great job with the voice, and the public liked this one short, so UPA makes 3 more Mr. Magoos in 1950. Columbia releases them, follows that up with 3 more in 51. And then they increase in popularity, actually get nominated for Academy Awards, and win 2. One Oscar in 54 for When Magoo Flew, and a second Little Golden Statue in 56 for Magoo's Puddle Jumper. And by this point, Drew, UPA is now churning out a ton of Magoo shorts annually. 8 were sent out into theaters in 56, 9 in 57. And, because you need a supporting cast when you're doing that many cartoons, we ended up with characters like Mr. Magoo's Chinese houseboy, Charlie, who really leaned in. There we go. Who leaned into the stereotypes of the day. So he's got buck teeth. He's got a pigtail. He only speaks pidgin English. Anyway, UPA stays in the Mr. Magoo theatrical short business right up till 1960. In fact, there was even a feature film built around the character, 101 Arabian Nights, released to theaters December of 59. This kind of interesting, Drew. Loose retelling of the story of Aladdin, where Mr. Magoo then plays Aladdin's uncle, Abdul Aziz Magoo. But 1960, the year that Magoo makes the jump to television, there's a syndicated show, debuts November of 1960, and 26 episodes are produced, and these episodes are all made up of 4-minute-long cartoons with bumper material. So I want to say there were a total of 130 4-minute-long cartoons made, and these air on various TV stations in North America through February of 62. Magoo then returns to television December 18th of that year, 1962, in Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, which, by the way, today is recognized as the first animated holiday special produced exclusively for television, and it paved the way for Rudolph in 64, Charlie Brown Christmas in 65, and Grinch in 66, and weird little bend on the story, Drew. Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol and Rudolph both debut on NBC, whereas Charlie Brown and the Grinch, those are on CBS. And ABC gets to the party weirdly late. They don't get in the animated holiday special business till December of 1970, and that's with Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the thing with Fred Astaire. Anyway, back to Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. does well enough in the ratings in 62, and in particular when it re-airs in 63, that NBC decides to take a flyer on a primetime animated series built around this character. So The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo. It debuts on Saturday night, September 19th. 26 episodes are produced, and they air on NBC, only last a single season. But by now, Drew, Columbia has sold the 51 Mr. Magoos that UPA produced back in the 40s and 50s for theatrical release to television. And now viewers are reaching out to individual TV stations around the country to complain about characters like Charlie, Mr. Magoo's Chinese houseboy. And this starts to make things difficult for the folks at UPA because, well, all right, the market for theatrical animated shorts has dried up as of the beginning of the 1960s. And so they really need what they're making for television to succeed. So now we're going to pivot to the other thing they did, in the early 60s. This was the Dick Tracy animated series. And it was syndicated and started being shown around the country in January of 1961. And Drew, you're going to have to at some point take a look at some of these because it's based on the Chester Gould comic strip, just like the Warren Beatty film from 1990, right?
Yes, one of my favorites. Yes.
Okay, but here's the thing. They created a set of characters for television that's, you just look at it and it's like, did you go into this wanting to offend every possible ethnic group out there? Because, well, for starters, there was Joe Jitsu, all right, who was this buck-toothed detective who wore thick glasses, squinted, and practiced martial arts. There was then Heap O' Calories, who was this big, fat Irish street cop who spoke in a thick brogue. And then there was Go-Go Gomez, who wore a giant sombrero and a serape and was, because he was actually voiced by Mel Blanc, was basically the human version of Speedy Gonzales. And the Dick Tracy animated series ended its run in syndication January of 62, and given this problematic set of characters, the TV show rapidly stopped airing by the late 1960s. In fact, this was one of the factors that led to UPA closing its doors in 1970s. And I shared that story today because I now want to chat with Drew about the news that broke just over the past week about Jorge Gutierrez and how he's developing a Speedy Gonzales movie for Warner Brothers. And look, I just want to say, before we get the conversation started here, if there is one person on this planet that I would want to be developing a Speedy Gonzales movie, it would be Jorge. The huge,
absolutely,
huge
he's
talent.
the best. He's the best.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly. I mean, if you've seen Book of Life, if you've seen Maya and the Three, more to the point, I don't know if you saw any of the press coverage of this announcement, Drew, but Gutierrez was talking about how in his house growing up, the fastest mouse in all of Mexico was a hero. So, this is the right guy to be making this movie. But here's the thing. I remember things, Drew. And when's the last time you saw Looney Tunes back in action?
Oh, God. This is a loaded question, Jim. Yeah.
Okay. The Joe Dante, Eric Goldberg movie, which actually has a scene set in the Warner Brothers executive dining room where at one point the camera is going across the room and you see Porky Pig and Speedy Gonzales sharing a table, and they're kind of both looking very downbeat. And you pause the table long enough to hear Porky, as he's talking to Speedy, say, "First they told me to lose the stutter. Then they told me I'm not funny." It's a pain in the butt to be being politically correct. And Speedy then just finishes up with, "You're telling me." And it's like, Drew, that was just 23 years ago where Porky Pig and Speedy Gonzales were only allowed to do a cameo in Looney Tunes Back in Action. And now, just 5 years back, we got Space Jam, A New Legacy, that opens in theaters July of 2021. And Porky is allowed to have a somewhat bigger presence in that film. He actually gets to rap as the notorious P.I.G., where Speedy Gonzales is still basically kind of shoved to the side, kept out of the spotlight in this LeBron James film. And Gabriel Iglesias, by the way, now the official voice of Speedy Gonzales. In fact, it's going to be interesting to see if Jorge keeps him on the job. But he actually talked about this in his 2021 stand-up special for Netflix, and how Speedy's presence in Space Jam: A New Legacy had been less than it should have been, again, because of political correctness. And it just, I gotta wonder, what's changed over the past 5 years. And I mean, I have to assume that because this is going forward at all, this has to be totally on whatever pitch Jorge made to Warner Brothers management. I still...
Yeah, that's my assumption. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember the first time I saw, the Book of Life, and when the first time you get to see the country of Mexico in the Book of Life, there's that amazing giant black mustache, in the center of the country, and it just... Jorge is such a proud Mexican that, it's one of these things where this movie, when we finally get to see it, is going to be such a celebration of the character and the culture. I can't wait. But that thing that he said in the press leading up to, or this week's announcement, to the effect of Speedy was a hero in his house. And it's like, okay, can't wait to see that movie. On the other hand, who was also a hero in their home, Walt Disney. Well, he was a legend at his own studio. In fact, Walt's office up in Suite 3H, that's on the third floor of the original animation building, Walt Disney Studios. And for those of you who've never been in this office, and by the way, that includes myself, there was a formal office, a working office, and a secretary's area, which, by the way, was locked up tight when Walt died back in December of '66. And it basically stayed locked up till the summer of 1970, which is when the Disney Archives was founded. And Dave Smith told me that one of his very first duties after he got the job was you go into Walt's office and you catalog everything that's in there because, we want to get back into that space. We want to, it's been standing locked tight forever. And what's interesting is once, the stuff was cataloged and they cleared the stuff out, it was Walt's nephew, Roy E., who was in there for a while. And then for a long time, it was Ron Miller. Then it was Michael Eisner. After that, I want to say after Michael went over to the new Team Disney building, Frank Wells was in that space. And then for a time, producer Mark Cherry, the Desperate Housewives guy, my understanding is he actually had that written into his contract that I get to occupy Walt's office. Anyway, as for all that stuff that Dave Smith cataloged, April of 1973, the Walt Disney Story opens down at Disneyland, and that's set up in the lobby of the Opera House. And there's a replica of Walt's office set up. And now it gets interesting, Drew, because that's the phrase they used, replica. Like, no, we didn't necessarily take everything of Walt's and bring it down to Anaheim. Though, where the story gets interesting is late September, early October of 1984, one morning, a very angry Lillian Disney Truans shows up at Disneyland. And she basically tells the park manager that I lent a lot of our personal stuff to the Imagineers while they were setting up the exhibits for the Walt Disney Story. And this company just fired my son-in-law. And as a direct result, you don't get to use that stuff anymore. I want it all back. And so, and it was one of these things where Disney actually shut down the Disney story, the Main Street Opera House, for a while Lillian walked through and then, I want that. And then they had to go out and chase down replicas. And that's the thing, that they described it as a replica of Walt's office. So you're getting replicas to fix the replica.
That's really interesting. I had not heard that story before.
Yeah, no, she was supposedly absolutely furious. But at the same time, if we jump ahead to October of 2001, we have the Walt Disney One Man's Dream thing that opened at Disney's Hollywood Studios, part of the 100 Years of Magic thing. And they also had a replica of Walt's office. So it's like, this is one of those, a copy of a copy of a copy. But because Dave Smith has cataloged exactly what was in the room, they could chase down replicas, which brings us to your visit with Katie to Suite 3H as part of this press event we're going to talk about in a moment. But you had been up in this space before, right?
I had. It was actually, I think, for a Walt Disney Animation Studios thing. Was it? It might have been for Zootopia too. They brought us over and let us walk through. And I got the pin, which I treasure. When you go through the office, you get a pin that you can only get if you've done it. They did not give it out on the night of the screening. So, yeah.
But now this thing. Well, first of all, the I guess after Mark Cherry left the studio, the offices were left empty in the old animation building, and eventually they came under the control of the archive, and someone at the archive proposed this, that maybe we could set up the space at the studio, because they were starting to do tours for D23, and the notion was, we could create something special here, and so it came online originally in 2015, and I want to say, as recently as this past week, I was over on the D23 website, and they're now offering a 2.5 hour long tour of the Disney lot that includes a stop in Walt's office. Again, you have to be a member of the organization to get this. But do you want to talk about the space, Drew? Because again, you've now been up there at least twice. What's it like?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is composed of 3 separate rooms. The secretary's room, which has, all of his awards in a shelf, and the one of the docents was saying that, this was kind of an intimidating spot to wait for Walt, just looking at all of his accomplishments lining the wall. I believe they said that part of Saving Mr. Banks was actually shot there as well. Which is the movie about Walt and Mary Poppins, which I really liked a lot.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
Same thing here.
So then you go into his kind of formal office, which is really lovely, and has the piano where the fabled Sherman brothers would sit and play for Walt every Friday. Yeah, it's a really beautiful space, and just looking at all the kind of knickknacks and things, there's an original Lady Stuffy from Lady and the Tramp underneath the coffee table and things like that. And then you get into his working office, which is really neat because you can tell, that it was for him and whoever he was working with kind of to chop things up. There's a big coffee table, kind of like low slung, where you could imagine him poring over blueprints or scripts or, designs for characters and things. And then on the wall, they have a giant map of Disneyland that seems to be timed to the new Tomorrowland kind of expansion. So you see, this is where the monorail is going to be, and this is where, all of the submarines are going to be, and that's really neat. And then sort of back in the office, the working office, was his kitchen, which is kind of an underrated part of it because they have the pantries open and there are like vintage cans of Spam and chili there, Jim, which you will love. And there's also his actual monogrammed glasses on the countertop of the kitchen, which is really neat. And then you leave and you kind of go through a passage and there's some kind of personal items from him, things from his wallet and things in a little glass case. And then there's another room kind of towards the exit where you see, which is very interesting to me, living, 4 minutes from the studio, kind of the expansion of the valley and how that related to Walt Disney Studios and the development of the actual kind of like physical footprint of the studio in Burbank. Which is super interesting. Yeah, and then that's it. It's sort of, I left the screening pretty quick to get over there, and we kind of were shuffled through pretty quickly, but there was a line going all the way down the corridor, which, passes the offices of our beloved friend of the show, Josh Gad. Yeah, it's just if you ever get the opportunity to do it, and Jim, we should try to arrange it the next time you're out. It's just a really fascinating kind of like step back into history. What's also really interesting is that there's a lot of ashtrays, Jim, which for a man who, I think they have somebody on staff who just erases cigarettes from every photo of Walt. Yeah.
All right. Well, all right, let me talk about briefly the one part. I guess they don't take you on the tour, which is Walt's private bathroom off of Suite 3H, which I can't tell you how my friend Jeff Lang got in there. He was on the Disney lot sometime between Frank Wells and Mark Cherry, but he did manage to get into the suite and did make his way back to Walt's bathroom. And Drew, this will not surprise you in the least that when you finally got into Walt's bathroom, guess what the wallpaper was?
Tell me.
Trains.
Of course.
Lots and lots
of course.
There we go.
Course.
So that's, and that's the thing. Jeff came out, well, look, all right. Makes perfect sense. But it was, 50s, 60s era, just dozens upon dozens of trains, right on top of one another. So it's like, oh, well, of course it would be that. So, but all right. Anyway, when we get back from this break, we are going to talk about the event that actually got Drew on the lot, and got him to he and Katie the chance to get into Walt's offices, and that's Leslie Iwerks' brand new documentary for Disney Plus, Disneyland Handcrafted. But before there's that, there's this. And all right, we're back. And Drew, before we get to Disneyland Handcrafted, I did want to touch on one last little bit of animation-related news. And you must have seen the thing about the How to Train Your Dragon sequel.
Yes.
The casting news. And do you want to tell folks what happened?
Yeah, well, this is something that, I've talked to Dean about this before, but he actually got to cast Kate Blanchett in the role of Hiccup's mother. And now the question on everyone's mind, and by everyone I mean Jim Hill and Drew Taylor, is
there we go.
Will he follow through with the original plan for How to Train Your Dragon 2, which was going to have her character fully embrace the dark side and kill the father character played by Gerard Butler in both versions and assume the role as Big Bad for the third movie, because this was the plan. He was talked out of it by Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Yep.
If there's a reason the third film feels a little rudderless, I think it is this decision. And they really have an opportunity to correct things in a big way, and I'm really hoping they do. But
I remember I was at Comic-Con, and Dean and I went to lunch, and he talked about this, and it was such a bold choice, but he did sort of reference the fact that Jeffrey is not happy with this. This is such a big reveal. And evidently, the test screening so far, when they did the film with this reveal, really kind of shook a lot of the little kids. And And there's the other aspect of this. Folks have to remember that it was Dean and Chris Sanders who directed the first How to Train Your Dragon. So Dean was doing this second one solo, and is it polite to say he kind of got railroaded by Jeffrey on this?
That's how I see it. I think he will be much more polite because Dean is the loveliest human on the planet. But
there we go.
Yeah, that's how I saw it. But I wonder if this is even in discussion. Like, is this even something that they are thinking about doing? I haven't talked to Dean in a while, but yeah, I really am curious what is going on there, because they really do have a chance to really set things right. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Jim?
I hate to say it, because it's just, face it, How to Train Your Dragon, it exists as a trilogy now. It's beloved IP with supporting television series and theme park lands, and just the notion of that sort of departure from a world that, and again, remember, the second film came out in 2014. We're barely, a decade, a decade and change away from the world when the world first met Velka. And it's just the notion of, I don't know, if a Comcast and a Universal would allow this sort of departure, from such a valuable IP. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe somebody can go off and write the fan fiction version of this and have people love it so much that, Dean then has a tool, to bring to Universal. See, they love this. We can do this. Be brave, I guess in a weird sort of way, it's kind of the same way I feel right now, knowing that Chris Sanders is out there somewhere writing the script for the Lilo and Stitch sequel. And how much is Disney going to hold his feet to the fire, as in, well, you need to bring an angel, Stitch's girlfriend, because, we want to sell a second plush. This is the thing. You may create these characters, but it's still these giant corporations that own these characters, and that ultimately is the priority, protecting them and making sure that little kids still buy the plush. So. Anyway, getting back now to Disneyland Handcrafted, and I got to tell you, folks, Drew and I have long been fans of Leslie Iwerk's work. I mean, she did, for example, that amazing documentary on her grandfather. The hand behind the mouse, the Iwerk story. Likewise. Her wonderful Pixar story documentary from 2007, and the project that actually really led to Disneyland Handcrafted, the Imagineering Story limited series for Disney Plus. Which, by the way, am I still hearing correctly? There's a second season of that at least being shot?
Yeah, I'm unsure of what that is. I don't know if that's a separate project. She's been kind of cagey about it. I think she says that, like, we're still shooting things, but I don't know if that's I don't know what this chapter would be called, the Losers Club or something. I don't know. But we don't want to develop a new they could do it just on that Wall Street Journal story, Jim. That could be the next season. Yeah. Okay. But she's an amazing documentarian, and I love the Imagineering Story. Still one of the best things Disney Plus ever produced, I think. No.
Absolutely. But let's now talk about Disneyland Handcrafted, which, again, kind of fascinating. You would think after the Imagineering Story, we had seen everything. I mean, she found, amazing footage there, but, no, all this 16 millimeter film, all of these audio recordings that nobody had tripped over before. And, we get to see the early version of Disneyland rising up out of the ground anew.
Yes, I think, so she found the footage when she was working on Imagineering Story. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Betsy Klein who said, maybe this is its own movie, that we don't need this all in the Imagineering Story. And yeah, a lot of it has not been seen. Jim, I think you will be particularly appreciative of the stuff from the actual broadcast on the opening day, including things like seeing all the trash on Main Street and stuff that we've heard about, Jim, for decades, and we finally see it in this documentary. But the way that they did it is really interesting because obviously there was no sound back then. So they took it to Skywalker Ranch. They did all the sound effects for everything. They were, making sure that it was archival and, the right time period and everything. And so they created all the sound effects. ILM colorized a lot of the footage, Jim, which is really cool to kind of bring it up to contemporary standards. And, what I told you, which I love so much, is you'll see these amazing shots of guys working on Main Street or whatever. And then you'll see a fat guy with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, pounding a nail for 5 whole minutes. And it's the most captivating thing you've ever seen. Clearly, Jim, OSHA was not involved back then because you get to see these guys, being lifted in the air and clamoring around and all of these things. And it really makes you appreciate, the movie's called Disneyland Handcrafted, and just seeing these kind of artisans, winging it, essentially, building Main Street and things like that. Things that you could still walk down and see in 2026 is just phenomenal. And there's no talking head interviews. It's all vintage sound bites, from people like John Hench and General Joel Fowler and, all these kind of real principles of the construction of Disneyland, talking about it kind of overlaid, which is something they did on a documentary called Apollo 11, which I don't know if you ever saw, Jim, but is a fascinating documentary about the space race. It's just, it's lovely. I really, really loved it. I appreciated all the time and care that went into it. And apparently, she was kind of making this on her own and had to go to a bunch of Disney people, including Asad Ayaz, who's, got a new title this week and is supervising marketing of pretty much every arm of the company. And Bob Iger, she said, gave the note that there should be more conflict, which is really fascinating. And as much smoking as you see, Jim, you never see Walt with a cigarette. It's absolutely incredible that they missed all of that footage. The thing that killed him, but, whatever. And it's just wonderful. I think you're going to love it. I really do. And what's also interesting is it's going to be on Disney Plus and also YouTube. So, they're kind of taking it to, defunct land's court, So, yeah, really, really great.
Wow.
Yeah.
How very cool. Now, you talked about, no talking heads in this movie, which is fascinating because they kind of brought out the A-team for this media event. You were talking about when we were sort of pre-gaming this that Jeff Curdy was there and Don Hahn was there. And also, you got to remember, Drew was still recovering from his appendicitis.
Yes.
So this was kind of a hit and run on the lot. And a certain friend of the show really wanted to see you, and you left early,
I know,
right?
Yeah. Josh Gad was there. Pete Docter was there. A lot of ex-Imagineers were there, including Bob Weiss and Tom Morris. Who else did I see? Bob Gurr was there, which is kind of weird to think about being trotted out for a job you had 25 years ago, but,
I get that. But on the other hand, people are still clearly talking about it, still fascinated.
Yeah, and I think they're all really good friends with Leslie. I think that's what it was, more than anything else, that she asked people to come out, and they said, sure. So, it was a great group of folks. They were all just kind of mingling around in front of the main theater on the Disney lot. Mickey was there. They were handing out churros. It was a good time. So,
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
the movie was great, and it was nice to be out and about for a little while after I'd been basically in bed for, 3 weeks. So it was great. Yeah.
Speaking of being in bed, and again, folks, at some point we'll have to share this pair of photos, but there's the photo. Drew actually, before his surgery, sent me a photo from inside his hospital room at St. Joe's where he was looking down on the Disney lawn. You can literally see the water tower. And then, well, what was it? That very same night you're there with Katie and you realize from where you're standing in the Disneyland, you can see your hospital room, right?
Yeah. It was literally where I looked up kind of past the cafeteria and I was like, oh, that's where I had stayed for 4 days in December. My beautiful hospital room. And so, I took a funny photo and I sent that to Jim too. And we can put that up in the notes if you want.
There we go.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was a really nice time. And just a great night celebrating a great film. And I hope everybody watches it on Friday. And Jim, we'll talk about it next week for sure.
There we go.
Yeah.
And just a reminder that it does drop, I want to say, on Thursday. So what is that? Thursday, the 22nd of January. So again, that's Leslie Iwerks, Disneyland Handcrafted. And very much looking forward to seeing that myself. And again, Drew standing there looking up at St. Joe's. And of course, there's the famous story about when Walt's in his hospital room and is looking down at the Disney lot. They supposedly kept the lights on at the studio. They kept the lights burning, so Walt, as he was slipping to the next phase of his existence, could see what he'd built. And speaking of things, when you light things, they lit up, you like a fuse. If you're not already listening to Light the Fuse, which is the official Mission Impossible podcast, you are missing out on something really special. And just a reminder, Drew did this podcast with his co-host, Charles Hood. There are nearly 300 episodes of this show in its archive, and every one of them has some sort of amazing behind-the-scenes Hollywood-related story, well worth listening to. And we also do some fun stuff here at Jim Hill Media as well. We got shows like Disney Dish with Len Testa, Epic Universal podcast I do with Eric Hersey. Likewise, I Want That Too. That's the Disney Merch podcast that I do with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren. And later on this month, there'll be a brand new Disney Unpacked. That's the thing that Len and I do for Patreon with veteran Imagineer Jim Schul. And we're going to use Tokyo Disneyland's Pooh's Honey Hunt ride as an excuse to pay tribute to the late, great Eddie Sato. And just a reminder, on next week's show, Drew and I will shine a spotlight on Roger Allers. All right. Beyond that, just a quick thank you to Eric Hersey and David Gray for the great job they do when it comes to the editing and production of this podcast. Also, a favor to ask, if you could please head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this show, as well as Light the Fuse. And as we head out the door here, Drew, social media-wise, where can the nice folks find you?
On Instagram at Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt, and on X at Drew Tailored. But if you want to say something mean to me about Star Wars, don't bother. I've had enough of it this week, Jim. So, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. As for me, you can find me on X and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and then over at Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. And beyond that, just want to thank you all for listening, and that Drew and I will be back with a brand new episode of Fine Tuning next week. Till then, take care.